I moved to America thinking that university would work basically the same as it does in the UK, but I had no idea how different the systems actually were. So in this video, I'm going to explain the 8 things that confused me most about US university when I first arrived. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how the US university system is very flexible compared to the UK. In the UK, you don't really get much choice with your classes. You have a set path, and the amount of years that it's going to take you to graduate is the amount of years, and there's nothing you can really do about that. But in the US, you actually get a lot of freedom with choosing your classes and how long you want to graduate, and there are lots of alternative credit opportunities that you can do to accelerate your degree. As I said, you get a lot of freedom to choose your classes. So there are 3 main parts to a US degree. You've got majors, electives, and gen eds. Each take up about 1/3 of your degree, give or take. So 1/3 is electives, 1/3 is major, and 1/3 is gen ed. And actually your electives don't have anything to do with your major whatsoever, and neither do your gen ed. So your major is only 1/3 of your degree. So you have a lot of freedom to choose which classes you want to take. For your electives, they don't have to have anything to do with your major whatsoever. You can choose whatever classes you want. And with your gen eds, you will have some choice. They'll give you a bracket or a category of classes that you need to take, and you get to choose from a shortlist. And I know in the UK that you do have some choice, but it's nowhere near as much as the US. As a part of your degree, you can also take a minor, which is an extra flexibility about a US degree. What a lot of people would do was take that elective credit and that 1/3 of their degree and do it all to do with one subject. So for example, do it all to do with maths, and then they'll get a mathematics minor if they fulfill all the requirements. Minors are not required within your degree, but they add extra flexibility and just add a bit of prestige when you graduate. And another thing to note here is that, as I mentioned earlier, there is a lot of flexibility with the timeline of your degree. Even though your university might tell you that it takes 4 years to graduate, if you fulfill all the requirements earlier, then you can just graduate early, which a lot of people actually do. So the second thing we're going to talk about here is credits are much more important than time. Graduating is all about completing credits and requirements. It's not about sitting at university for a certain number of years. So if someone wanted to, they could graduate within a year if they completed all the requirements. 4 years that your university gives you as a time frame is just an estimation for how long your degree is going to take. If you can complete the requirements for your major and your graduation requirements sooner, then you can graduate earlier. There is no problem with that. That is an incredibly normal thing to do in the US. And that is most certainly something that I did not realize before going. I looked up the college I was going to go to, and it told me it was a 4-year university. That does not mean it's a 4-year college. So as I said, once you've completed the requirements, you can just graduate. I know a lot of people that have graduated early, a semester early, or a year early, or maybe even a year and a half early, like I'm planning to do. This is a really important thing to get your head around, which is this concept here. I would say it's one of the most important things to understand about US college. And once you get your head around this, you can actually save a lot of time instantly. Okay, so the third thing we're going to talk about, which ties nicely into the last one, is 4 years is just the average path that they set out to you. Before I went to US university, I looked up my college online and it said it was a 4-year college. So I just assumed I'd have to stay there for 4 years. But after arriving, I actually realized that 4 years was just the average standard path they give to students. Then I realized there were lots of strategies to reduce the timeline of your degree, like taking CLEP exams, planning your degree effectively, taking the maximum number of credits every semester, and maybe even getting transfer credits from your previous education. This then allowed me to accelerate the length of my degree, and it didn't become a 4-year college anymore. It became 2.5 years. Your degree length is not set in stone, even though it might say that online. The fourth thing that confused me is that you can actually be strategic about planning your degree. So you can do things to make your degree faster, and you have to take it into your own hands. Some of these things that you can do include taking the maximum number of credits every semester, like I just mentioned. You can do extra exams like CLEP exams and DSST exams based on what your university allows, and you can plan your whole degree yourself in order to be more optimal and save time and money. You have to plan around things like prerequisites. Prerequisites are basically just a word. I don't know whether they use that at UK university, but it's basically a word for classes that you have to take before other classes. So you can't register for a certain class before you've taken this class because they think that you need this prerequisite class as knowledge before you actually are capable of taking this other class. So for example, maths, if you were to take a higher level maths before a low level maths class, then you'd be less likely to understand, so they actually wouldn't let you register for it. Each college will actually have different residency requirements, which means that you need to be careful when you transfer schools, and you need to be careful with how many CLEP exams you take, because some schools will cap how many you can do and say that you need to take a certain number of classes at their school or a certain category of classes at their school. So this is all something to be careful of. Regardless of this, you can be strategic. You've just got to understand understand the rules so you can get around them and manage to optimize your degree in the best way possible. So the fifth thing that confused me was that lower level classes were actually repeat content from the UK. The classes that you'd learn in the first and second year of university, which they call 100 and 200 level classes, I'd actually already learned doing my GCSE and A levels, and they were very straightforward for me. And this is something that I really wasn't made aware of before going to America. This meant that a lot of classes were actually rendered unnecessary, and I didn't really have to sit through them. Some of them I was able to do extra exams to clip out of them, and I was also able to provide syllabuses for some of them, but a lot of them I just had to sit through and just accept that I was relearning content. I found it pretty crazy because this was university for me, so I was expecting it to be super hard, but actually the first 2 years at least are really just overlapping from the last 2 years of school in the UK. So the sixth thing that confused me about American college was you could actually complete classes in days instead of semesters. Now, coming from the UK, this isn't really a thing that would be possible. I don't think it really exists here. You can't really test out of classes, but in America it's a really common term to use and a really common thing to actually do. You can actually do exams external from your school or university. Each university will have certain policies based on these exams run by like official bodies, and then they'll assess whether the content that you cover within those exams is sufficient for their class, which is an equivalent class, and then if they decide that it's subsequent content that covers their class, then they'll give you the credit for it and you don't have to take the class at their school. I did quite a lot of these exams. I did 9 of these exams in my first year. I did CLEP exams, which is run by College Board, and I heard about DSST exams, but I never did any of those, but you can do them for slightly higher level subjects. From my personal experience when doing these, they were actually quite easy. I put easy in inverted commas because maybe for Americans or other people, they're slightly more challenging, but I know coming from the UK, getting used to exams like GCSEs and A-levels, these were nothing compared to them. They're mostly all multiple choice and it's a pass-fail system, and actually a lot of them are free. If you fail them, there's no risk to your GPA, so it doesn't go down or go up when you pass or fail. You just get the class or don't get the class. They're also really fast to complete, which I was really surprised about. So because these exams are relatively straightforward from someone coming from the UK or Europe, for a lot of these subjects I took a week or two, maybe even a few days for some of the easier ones to revise for subjects that I never actually covered before, but there isn't much content to learn and you don't have to know it that in depth because it's multiple choice. So as long as you do a few practice exams and you understand the content briefly, you don't have to know it comprehensively like you do for GCSE and A-levels, then you're pretty likely to pass. And for a lot of these, as I said, it doesn't matter if you fail and you can retake them too. And if you are incapable of passing the exam, which is completely fine, then you can always just take the class through school. So the seventh thing that confused me about US college before arriving is that your advisor's path actually isn't the most optimal one. Before I went to US college, I actually had a meeting with my advisor online. They asked me what I wanted to major in and I said I didn't know yet, so they said, okay, you should probably take these classes. Your advisor will just take you along the normal 4-year degree plan, which they have for each major and they have for each student. Now, these are really not optimal whatsoever, and that's just something I couldn't conceive coming from the UK. I initially thought that advisors would automatically help you save the most money and the most time in the US system. I had no idea there was kind of this 4-year standard route that most people take, but if you actually took it into your own hands, you could shorten it and you could take classes quicker and you could take classes through other sources and you could actually test out of them if you wanted to. But also, even simpler, you could just take more classes every semester for the same price. But sometimes your advisor won't even set you out on that path. That's something that you have to understand, and that's something that you have to ask for specifically. And I've even heard of students that didn't even have a meeting with their advisor before going to the US. They just arrived, they got scheduled in a degree plan, and that was it. By the time they'd arrived, they'd already lost a few $1,000s just because they didn't take the maximum number of credits a semester. More to that point is that you can plan your degree yourself, and I would actually highly recommend to always plan your degree yourself. This isn't really a thing that you would do in the UK or Europe because you kind of have a set path. Yeah, you have some options in your degree, but it's either take this or this. It's not like, how do we structure the entire thing and what do I do semester by semester in order to graduate and fulfill the requirements, and fulfill the requirements in kind of as shorter amount of time as you can, because that way you're automatically going to be saving tons of time and tons of money. By no means does this mean don't use your advisor at all. If you want to plan your degree yourself, go and do it with your advisor or do it by yourself and then go and have a meeting with your advisor and see what they have to say about it, because it's actually a very normal thing to graduate early and create a degree plan. But a lot of people just never bother to do it or never know that they can do it, or it's something that they can suggest to their advisor. advisor. But I'm sure once you bring it up and suggest it with the advisor, then they'll help you along your path. Also, if you create a degree plan, they'll be able to go through it with you and make sure that you fulfilled all the graduation requirements, which is a very important thing to do. And it's a very easy thing to miss a couple of requirements. And actually, sometimes you can choose for different classes to apply to different things. So the whole system is kind of like a big spider web that doesn't really make any sense. But if you understand that you should try and plan your degree yourself, or at least go to your advisor and say, I want this to be optimal, I want to take as many credits as I possibly can, then that's the first step in the right direction. And they'll help you through this giant confusing cobweb that US degrees are. So the eighth thing is that the US system rewards people who understand it. Now, the students who understand the US system the earliest and the best always save the most time and the most money. This doesn't mean because they work any harder or because they're any smarter than anybody else, but it's just because they understand and they have the information available. This information was never given to me before I went to US college, so this is why I'm giving it to you. And another important thing to note is that internationals never understand, especially when they first go. Usually they never understand before it's too late. So as I said, information equals opportunity in America. The more you understand the US system and the more you understand the ways that you can manipulate it and save time and save money, and you understand how it works, it will allow you to create your own path and allow you to take advantage of the flexibility of the US system. And it will just help you save time and money, and really, who doesn't want to save time and money? So these were the 8 biggest things that confused me in US college before I went. I hope you found this useful, and I'll be posting many more videos about US college and how the system works and giving you the information that you need before going. So if you're planning on studying in America, already at US college, or just want to understand a bit more about how the system actually works, then make sure to subscribe and stay tuned with the channel, because I'm going to be posting many more videos just like this in the future, explaining everything that I wish I knew before starting my US degree. And if you want to learn exactly how I planned my degree, saved money, and structured everything in the US system, then I've put together a full resource called the US College Guide, where I break down everything into much more detail and tell you exactly how I got into the position that I'm in now. You can check out the US College Guide in the description below. Thank you very much for watching the US College Guide, and I'll see you in the next one.